Business owners likely will have only one shot to sell a business. Most don't understand what drives value and how buyers look at a business. Until now. Welcome to the How to Sell a Business podcast, where every week we talk to the subject matter experts, advisors, and those around the deal table about how to sell at maximum value. Every business will go to sell one day. It's only a matter of when. We're glad you're here. The podcast starts now.
Today I had the opportunity to interview Andrew Wahl. And Andrew he's actually a colleague, but I met him probably, a couple years back, where, he's the second youngest deal guy I've ever hired. And I was the first at 22, and Andrew, when we brought him on, he was 30. And one of the things I'm so excited about him as a deal guy is when I hire people, I often am looking at, what's their pedigree? Have they ever sold a business? Can they empathize with business owners? And the reason I share this is Andrew sold his aerial photography business or drone business. And he took it from start to finish. So Andrew comes from a long line of entrepreneurs. That's the first thing. So he understands, just about business and about the trials and tribulations that you face as an entrepreneur. So he has his degree is in entrepreneurship from Ball State. He has owned and operated probably 3 or 4 different businesses. He is a commercial realtor. He's a business broker, and he is, I say it at the end of our visit that, it's people like him that I believe are the future of this type of industry as far as the business brokerage and the selling of businesses, because I think the median age of people spinning up companies is going to continue to get lower. And I think businesses like him and his drone business, you'll find that it started as a Christmas present, and he came out and turned it into a saleable asset. So as the podcast, as we recorded, you can hear how, as a seller, all of the things that went into making it a saleable business, going through due diligence, how he had to address contracts, lots of contracts that were in place. I think you'll learn that, this is a type of business that appealed to a lot of different buyers, but ultimately who was the right buyer and how he found it. So Andrew is like I said, I believe he and people like him are the future of entrepreneurship. And so I am 100% certain that you will learn a ton about the sale process, whether you're in the drone world or not. But regardless, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Andrew Wahl. Well, welcome to the show, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ed. Really looking forward to talking with you today.
Well, it's good to have you. So before you came on, I recorded your intro, and I probably didn't do it justice. So can you take 30 seconds and, kind of give an overview of you, what you're doing, where you came from, and such?
Sure. Yeah. 30 seconds. That'll be tough, but, the high level is, come from a long line of entrepreneurs, went to Ball State to study entrepreneurship and marketing, came out of school, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go get a sales job, bounced around at a couple places, before I ended up in commercial real estate and business brokerage, which is what I do now. And most recently exited my aerial photography company that I started, back in 2014, believe it or not.
Well, let's start there. Let's talk about how you got into aerial photography.
Yeah. So I was actually admittedly taking my victory lap at Ball State and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And at the time, the drones had just come out. I had seen a few of them and had got one actually from my parents, just maybe a couple $100 one for Christmas, and threw my buddy's GoPro on it, took it up 1,000 feet, which is not does not fall in FAA regulations. And at that point, realized that there was definitely money to be made there, because up until that point, it really wasn't an option to just put a camera anywhere in the sky.
So you got a Christmas present, you stick a GoPro on it, and right out of the gate, a business is born.
Yep, that's basically it. I mean,
so how'd you get
your back in 2013? So the technology is
right. So how did you get your first customer, or who was your first customer?
I'm sure it was somebody, a family friend that was in real estate, that had said, hey, can you do this? And just kind of a quick sidebar for all the technology nerds out there. At the time, there was no feedback for the video. I mean, so now you have these screens on the camera and the controller that have a live feed. You can make settings and adjustments on the fly. At the time, I was just strapping my GoPro on with, really probably no gimbal, no stabilizer, flying it around this house, and I was just taking pictures automatically, and I just kind of sprayed and prayed. But yeah, it was a lot of the under the table at the time. It wasn't even commercially, you weren't even able to make money on it commercially. So it was a lot of these under the table cash deals, and it was an exciting time because everything was unfolding in that world. I was working one-on-one with clients directly, saying, "Hey, this would solve my problems." And so it was an exciting time. It was also a lot of running around, and there's no market, so it was $50 flights, and maybe I got up to a 75 at one point. And but yeah, no, it started out there, and then I think it was 2020 when I'm sorry, probably 2018 when the FAA came out and said, Part 107, go out and get your license, get insured, and you can do this commercially. And so at that point, I had probably 10, 15 clients that I just said, hey, I'm doing this. And thankfully they supported me, and some are even still with the company today, which is amazing.
Good for you. So, and it's funny, you start talking about, what you were doing in 2014, and then, everybody on the internet has seen that Cubs drone video.
Yeah.
Where they fly through Wrigley Field, through all the ins and outs behind the scenes. And, that's where it currently is, which is an entirely different business than I think you anticipated when you started, right?
100%. I mean, at one point,
yeah.
No, you totally hit it nail on the head. At one point, it's a miracle that you can put that camera right there and take this angle vantage point. Now everybody has a drone. Project managers on site have drones, because it's just not that tough to take pictures. I hate to say that for all my photography people out there, but it's really not. Now you take that and compare it up to a personalized, unique, coordinated fly through that in 30 seconds captures the true culture of your company or the feel of a bar. I mean, I'm still struggling to put a value on that, because it's just, you can't replicate it. It's very, very challenging too. So yeah, it's come a long way. It's exciting.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to kind of to the next question is where is the industry and where is it going? I mean, because as you look, as I see you and I see your exit and where you came from and where it's at, I'm just curious to know what happens next, because, when we talk on the podcast, we talk about value, and value is about earnings, growth, and risk. So I guess I want to start with the growth. Where does this thing go from here?
Well, I read an article recently that said by 2025, the drone industry is anticipated to be a $25 billion industry, which is crazy to me. What was once pictures and video and marketing, supplementation is now construction documentation. It can be used for scanning and surveying. It can be used for insurance purposes. I mean, there's things like LiDAR and infrared that people are just barely scratching the surface for. Surveys on bridges, where you can send a pilot out to take a full scan versus 2 people. I mean, the cool thing about the drone industry is it's just growing extremely laterally. There's some that are growing vertically, but missing people, shooting LiDAR to find old Mayan ruins. I mean, it's just amazing. I keep hearing these new things that come out, and I'm like, man, I want to do that. Yeah, to the drone industry and the drone manufacturers have made it extremely easy for a person and a consumer to pick up a drone and learn to fly it. So what was once the artistic aspect of making sure the footage was captured correctly is now kind of slowly starting to get moved to the side because you can shoot in auto. And guess what? The pictures and video look pretty dang good. There's editing softwares that are coming out that are actually AI driven. You can put in certain clips and it'll know that based on previous videos, this is how the flow goes. And so it's a very long way of answering your question, but I think where it's going is, there's this interesting separation between the equipment and then the pilot. And then the third part is, the application. And so it's becoming easier to pilot. There is some importance on the data management, but that seems to be where I feel like is the separating line. Everybody knows a kid down the street that can put his drone up and take some pictures. But when you can come back and say, look, we're licensed, we're insured, we're not a one-man shop, and we have all this data to back it up, it makes it a little easier, I think, for clients, vendors to say, yeah, we want to see you as a partner. Because there is a lot of, there's a ton of different layers of intricacies that come down to the data that's shot in high quality and high resolution. It takes up storage and, but I think there's a huge potential for the growth. And the best way to sum it up is I would say, commercializing the one-man band or woman band. A lot of times we see somebody get a drone, they start working, and then they don't see everything around the business that they need to develop.
So one of the challenges, and you and I worked on this a little bit, was value, and I'll be the first guy, and I am happy to eat my words. I am so glad that you exited so well, but I'm sitting here going, holy moly, what is the barrier from every person just getting in this business? And so I think that's where I want to go from growth to, in this business, what did you see as the components of value that made an exit viable? All right. So, what created that value? I think I know we're not talking names, but I do think that you have a great name.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was always from day one, something everyone was excited about. So I think, coming from the business brokerage industry, you learn things like a name doesn't necessarily carry value. Client lists, there's certain things, contracts in place, it's hard to assign a value on that. So when I went back through everything, I kind of just tried to flip the script a little bit and say, okay, if I'm a drone guy and I'm going to buy a drone company, why am I buying this drone company? So what I did is I immediately took any contracts in place. I tried to really set up a scenario to show these buyers that, look, you're coming into an industry that is seasonal and you're in Indiana. So on average, you have 99 sunny days a year. I'm actually kind of scared if I'm a buyer, not knowing what I know in the drone, because it is risky. So, obviously the cash flow was a big driver of the value, but then what we also try to do is take equipment. We have some static cameras on site that have helped us subsidize some lower cash flowing months in the winter. But ultimately I try to position it to where, most drone companies in town do not cash flow through the year. I would bet to say it's very challenging to have those repeat projects when it's not nice. And so that was a huge driver for me, was when I talked to buyers, it wasn't just a price. It was, this is what you're buying. This is what you're coming into. This is why I feel like this value, is where it's at. And we didn't have a whole lot of comps. We didn't have a whole lot of things to compare it to.
Right.
We looked at several across the nation, and they were honestly all over the board. I'd love to see if any of those have sold, but I feel like we had a good valuation. It was very justifiable. Everything worked fine through the lending, and so to me that
yeah, the deal penciled out, and having been in this business as long as I have, sometimes you sit there and you're like, this business should sell, all right, and when I looked at your business, I'm sitting here going, it's got all the ingredients that would make me cringe, and it would limit the buyer pool. All right. That, you really had, and not that most buyers, as you know, I mean, there's such a wide breadth of buyers that could have been a candidate for this. And I think as I continue to see the industry, and this is where my next question is going is, I know you had employees versus independent contractors, right? That's how you ran your business. I know in the creative world, most types of creatives, so to speak, run independent contractors. And so I think that's another difference of your business, is that I think what made it saleable was that you controlled the quality. You know what I mean? As opposed to just an independent contractor hoping that their skill set was sufficient to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my question, is what made you take on employees as opposed to diversify your risk with independent contractors, where, like you were saying, if things got slow, you could immediately jettison these guys.
Yeah.
So what made you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've played around with both over the years. Obviously, when you have independent contractors, you can control your margins. What you can't control is the independent contractors. So what we found was, when people called on a sunny day, you're tracking down an independent contractor, or you're at their mercy of what their schedule holds.
Yeah.
Especially during the peak months in the summer, it's an absolute no-brainer to have full-time employees on staff, hands down. Now, the challenge comes right around the end of November, when everybody locks down and your cash flow goes through the floor. So we've actually struggled in the past couple of years. We made a conscious decision to keep our employees on. And what we did was we made a slight adjustment on the hours they worked, but they might be lower in the winter. They might be a little higher in the summer. But what we found was that, when you can have a little bit more control over the employees, in a sense of not necessarily control, but more reliability. There's a shoot that came in this morning that somebody wanted to get something on, I think at 10 a.m. They called us at 9. Thankfully, we were able to staff it. You're not going to get that with an independent contractor. And then to your second point about the quality control, I mean, it's one thing to talk about the piloting and the drone flight. It's a whole nother thing to talk about subbing out the editing, because you really have to have a kind of a central unit that all the quality control is going through. And if you don't, you're going to be all over the board based on who that editor or data wrangler is.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because one of the things that I, in similar type businesses, people are going to Fiverr, people are going to Upwork, people are going to there's a third one, smaller, that, where you can just upload, I need this edited, here's the scope of work. Why didn't you go that route? Because to me, it would have made the company even more profitable. But it's just total quality control, or?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think at some point it's letting go of some of the internal control, so you can take two scenarios. One is Andrew's running the company. He's working with the clients. He's doing the project management, and then he's working with the vendors. And then scenario 2 is Andrew runs the company. He brings the project in and he brings his team in, and, you kind of share the workload. And I think that's where ultimately it came down for me. client wants to hop on a call or review a video, and you're trying to coordinate with somebody in India or another part of the world that,
Sure.
It's not even that they're not able to get on the phone, but you're not a team at that point.
You know what? That's a great point, because I think a lot of businesses like yours that end up being unsaleable is just because of that it's cobbled together. It may have great margins, it may print money, but at the end of the day, if you don't have those internal controls, and you don't, especially when you're working at the level you are, where you see some of your work on television, you see some of your work, in higher quality, venues, so to speak. I think that's a real difference, is that there's, I don't want to say a company versus a hobby, but I think when you start adding payroll, and you start adding quality control, and you start adding process and procedure and things like that, you then turn what was a Christmas present into a real business,
Yeah.
I think that.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think, at the end of the day,
go ahead.
It's about putting the right people in the right places. And, there was a point when I was doing the video editing early on, when someone had asked me, can you take this video clip and put our logo on there? And it was exciting for me. It was fun. But then I looked up one day and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not a video editor. And it kind of plays the same tune with subcontractors. You want somebody that's an expert that does enjoy it as a hobby, so that they're coming to you saying, I thought about this. What do you think about this? And if you try to commercialize it too much, and you put it in a box and you rinse and repeat, your product becomes stale. And so I always tried to push that early on, even if we weren't cash flowing as much. I wanted to keep the team, and because I knew that the guys that we hired were rock stars. And
tactically, man, that was a great decision. And to be honest with you, I totally believe that's why it sold. 100%.
Yeah, I think it very, very much helped. And we'll get on this later. But it almost caused some complications with the sale, believe it or not. So,
well, then let's talk about the value. Where now it's behind you. Where was the value?
The value, the dollar amount?
No. Where were the value drivers in the business? Tell me now that you're behind it, why did this business sell? And I'm certain there's 3 or 4 things that made it so.
Yep. So, I think first off, the fact that it was a more than one person company was interesting. It was, the dust had settled. There was a good chain of hierarchy. So that was one. 2 was the contacts and clients that we had. So over the, call it 10 years, I think we had developed and worked with over 1,200 different clients. I mean, that was anybody coming into the industry that has 1,200 to work off day one that we've worked with, I thought held some extreme value. From a technological standpoint, our project management software was all cloud-based, set up very clean. Our accounting was set up. Social media was updated. Websites were clean and loaded well. And so I think from that perspective, then arguably the biggest driver was the way that we were intaking new opportunities. About a year and a half ago, I made a conscious decision that I needed to stop being the total face of. About a year and a half ago, I made a conscious decision to, slowly kind of step out of the limelight of being the main face of the company. And as much as I hated doing that, because I do love the sales and I do love to problem solve, what it helped us realize or what it helped us achieve was, another level of separation where it wasn't just Andrew Wahl's company. It was, this is a company that's known. This is a company we've heard. And then these people were going to our website to fill out the form. So it was, again, day one for a new buyer. You're going to get an email or two that week of new projects. And then the final ones, I think the employees in place, we had equipment out on the field as far as construction cameras. So those are recurring expenses and
recurring revenue, you mean?
Recurring revenue and
Right.
not expenses, recurring revenue. And then obviously the contracts, we have a couple contracts in place that with some good clients. And, so when you come into it, if you have cash flow, you have labor, you have incoming leads, start running out of room to blow up the deal.
So did you do a lot from a marketing standpoint? Were you more geared digitally, or were you belly to belly sales?
Good question. I mean, so I really enjoy networking at events in person. So there was some stuff, especially early on. I mean, early on it was boots on the ground, shaking the trees, pounding the pavement, day in and day out, no question about it. As we developed over the years, one, I got burnt out on that, and two, I started realizing, hey, if these clients, we want the good clients, we want the tech savvy clients that are, we're a drone company, we can't be cold calling. And so we made a change. We updated the website. We created a couple forms that we could intake. And I think at that point it was a milestone for us. We've always been a younger company, but kind of letting go and understanding, hey, people are going to come in this way. And even if they don't fill out the form and get kicked off, they're probably not a good client. If a client's not going to fill out 5 questions, we're not going to call them back. And so at one point it was get everything that moves. And then it became kind of slowly putting the shotgun away, pulling out the rifle and saying, hey, there's $1 billion project going on over here. Why are we not doing something? Versus the calling on the residential real estate firms that are, race to the bottom.
So that's funny you said it. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was that you were the face of the company. And I know over the last year and a half that you stopped being that person. So then my question is, from a saleability standpoint, I have to believe that the buyer or the buyers that you interviewed or, as candidates to acquire were probably pretty worried about it. So how did you get around you being that guy?
Yeah. Well, I think one, every business transaction is a little different. I think one of the, outside the box things we talked about early on was that I was very adamant that the company continues to succeed. And depending on what buyer I talked to, depending on where we got with our conversations, I made that pretty clear up front that, listen, I understand there's a hesitation here. This is my baby. I've been with it the last 10 years. I'm sure there's some concerns. What I've realized, what I would have told myself back then, is that with technology and where everything's at, the transition is much easier than I think a lot of sellers and buyers truly understand. And I'll give you just a quick example real quick. Like with this buyer, one of the first things we did was get him access to email. Well, I'll back up just a second. This ended up being a stock sale versus an asset sale, which was a little different, and it makes it a lot more interesting, but ultimately makes the transition 100 times easier. And so by getting the buyer access to email, by giving the buyer access to the accounting software, 80% of any questions and follow-up during transition are going to probably be answered, if not more, right? Because you have a history of everything that's gone on.
Is that business specific, or do you think that's in general? Like the way you structure the transition, in this case, you said it was a stock sale, which is fine, but as an asset sale, you could have offered the same thing.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
So yeah, I think, to sum it up, what I've learned is that I think buyers and sellers both going into this exiting a business or purchasing a business, there's a lot of concerns about how people are going to take news, how people are going to transition, and I would be lying if I said there wasn't some concern on myself and the buyer's part. But I think it's all about how you deliver the information, and again, flipping the script, putting yourself in their shoes. So when you go to a client, you introduce the new buyer, you explain how things are going to be run, you explain that you're still going to be involved to whatever degree that is, and then in a perfect world, maybe it's been like that for a few weeks, so they haven't even noticed a change in quality. But again, at the time, I tried to reassure them, I'm here to help any way I can. I'm here to make any introductions. I'm here to help smooth anything over. But at the end of the day, I think it's a good lesson from the buy side as well. It's a risk that the buyer runs. And fortunately for me, the buyer that came in said, look, I understand that when I come in here and purchase this, clients might walk, employees might walk. But we, again, both had enough conversations up front to say, realistically, I think if we deliver it this way, why would they? There's.
So expound on that. So what do you think the one thing that you did in transition made the difference in retention of employees? Just kind of calm the fears. What is there any one thing that stuck out that, what, this is probably why it's going as well as it is?
Yeah, this is going to be a super corny answer, but I think the reason is because it was authentic. From beginning, even before I listed the business, I knew in my head that I was not going to sell to the first person. I was not going to sell to a big corporate client or a corporate account. I was going to sell to somebody that was going to come in and take care of the clients, take care of the employees, and then grow it. And so that was my story the whole time. And that still has been my story while I've told the employees, while I've told vendors, while I've told clients, hey, this is not a fire sale and I'm out and I'm headed to Florida. You'll never see me again. This was the right time. It was a tough decision, but it was the right decision. And I 100% stand behind the decision and the purchase and the acquisition. And if somebody wants to, jump ship for that, we'd love to talk to them. But the reality is, we really left them no reason to.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you say that. So what did prompt you? Why did you decide you wanted to sell? What was there one event, or, I know that you were spread pretty thin, but what finally, what triggered that?
Yeah. Well, it was a culmination of things, I would say. I got into commercial real estate a little over 2.5 years ago. That was a new industry that I got in that I had some experience in, but I really found that I enjoyed it. And I had found some success in there early on. About a year after getting into real estate and getting some feet under me, I get a call from Indiana Business Advisors. It says I should come join them. So that's two jobs.
That was a good decision.
That was a great decision. That's 2 jobs. You add on the company, and that's 3 shots.
Here.
Hang on. Yeah, mark that.
Yep, I got it.
So after joining Indiana Business Advisors, along with commercial real estate, that brings me up to 3 jobs. I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to sit on a few boards locally. And then my greatest achievement and accomplishment is my 2 children under 2.5 years old that have become extremely fun on a day-to-day basis. And I just realized between the 8 of those things, as much as it pained me, Top Shot was the obvious bottleneck, not only for my life, it's not necessarily fair to say for my life, but for the company's potential. I mean, I knew that there was a huge potential. We weren't turning jobs down, but I definitely wasn't doing what I should have been from a business development and staffing perspective. And so, it made sense to put it on the market at the time and to start working through buyers, knowing that here in the next few years would be a good time to exit.
So, out of all 8, why didn't you double down on the aerial business? What made you sell it as opposed to, you know what, I'm going to get out of commercial real estate, I'm going to get out of business brokerage, and I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket?
You're gonna call me a millennial. I have been running since 2000, really probably 12. I had a few businesses in college. I've always loved business development. I've been a deal junkie from the first time I had a deal, and I'm tired. I'm so tired of the day to day, and I think it was manageable without kids. Anybody out there with kids under 3 is gonna relate to me immediately, but it was too thin. I was spread too thin, and I think I did it long enough, knowing that I was busy. I like being busy. I like when people need me. It just got to a point where I needed to prioritize things better, and I just wasn't. I was dropping too many balls in too many different areas, and the aerial photography company is a go all the time. There's, again, especially being seasonal, especially having an average of 99 sun days in a year in Indiana, you have to be on it. And if not, they're going to call somewhere else. I mean, that's when you get that form, it's on. And weather changes, schedule changes. So, I think
I get it.
I think where we could have done better was to expand our levels of management a little better. But again, we went down that path a few times, and it being a new industry, labor market's a little tough right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I get it. So I pulled the data on how many buyers you went through, and there were a bunch. You had a ton of activity.
How many
So
did we go through, or how many total do we have?
There was like 73.
Wow,
73 people that had an interest in an aerial photography business.
So hey, real quick before you get on that, I want to make a note. I promised myself I'd make a note during this podcast somewhere. This is relevant to any business owner, but I want to make sure I said this. I was very hesitant at the time. I was very hesitant about a year ago to put the company on the market. I think, like many sellers, I was worried that employees were going to find out, clients, etc. The one thing that I would like to make sure I got across is that it was so helpful for me to have a business listed at that early on and to be talking to buyers, because not every buyer was time-wise ready. They were interested about the business, but they said, hey, if you in 6 months, in a year, here's my events happening in life. I want to stay in touch with you. And it just allowed a much more enjoyable experience, because there was no rush. There was no, buyers, quote unquote, beating you up or trying to come in at a basement floor price. It was just a much better conversation between buyers.
Well, you went through a bunch, and I mean, when you have a full service brokerage experience, I mean, that's the whole point, is that it enables you to run your business, or in your case, all your businesses, and and it helps to have a team alongside of you to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, kind of thing. But circling back to those buyers, I mean, you talked a lot to a lot of different buyers, and I'm just curious to know, were there any particular questions that everybody, anybody, there was a commonality? These are the normal questions that I was getting, because those that are in other drone shops or pick the tangent type industry, they're going to be faced with the similar question. So I'm curious to know what those questions were and how you handled them, and were there any questions that made you uncomfortable?
Yeah. Well, I think, compared to a standard, if you're a business owner, you've done this a few times, I think it starts to all blend together in some way, right? What are you doing in revenue? What's your cash flow? What's your ad backs? What's your operating expenses? So all that's pretty standard. I think a lot of the questions initially were, how is this working? What are you doing? Obviously, a lot of people know aerial photography, drones, but they didn't know if this was a repairing, if this was a selling, so funny enough, a lot of it was just people that were like, I'm interested. What do you got going on here? You're doing, here's your revenue and you got this really cool book and what's happening? So I think, I don't know that I had a bigger question. I would say one of the biggest stopping points in a lot of my conversations was the buyers realized, or they assumed that they need to have this wealth of knowledge in the drone world. And I think that that's correct. But I also try to explain that, it's one of those things that's new and it's foreign, but it's an area of opportunity. If you can understand it, it's not a huge book of rules and information. It's just, there's some foreign things that you got to understand. And I can tell you right now, it's not rocket science. So I think there were some times that I was trying to sell people on, hey, don't sell yourself short. You can learn this, you can understand this. But
is that a seller saying, you know what, you can do this, no big deal? And because I think a lot of buyers sit there and go, yeah, you're so full of crap. There's no way I'm going to be able to do what you do. And when you start talking big money and personal guarantees and loans and so on and so forth, you're sitting there going, if I'm the buyer, I'm like, is this guy being transparent with me, or is he just saying this so I'll buy his business? Totally,
100%. And so, I try to show that here's our levels of internal process. I do the sales. If you're a buyer, you know how to talk to someone on the phone, check that box. Once you put the project in, the pilot takes it, it gets kicked over to the editor takes it, gets kicked back to you, send it back. And I try not to downplay it. I have a lot of drone experience, but I've not lied in the sense of I've not done a drone shoot for the company in 2 years, 3 years, and if I did it, that was probably the last one in 5 or 6. And so it's not like the owner has to have a license and be very, understanding. Now, I'd like to talk about that point for a second, because this proves some challenge. This, potentially brought up some complications. We had several buyers that were saying, hey, I'm a pilot and I want this, this would be great for me to buy and grow. And, one of the first few conversations was like, we would just remove the pilot day one or week 2 or whatever. We'd learn from them and then we'd cut them loose. I'm like, well, so I guess my point is that I don't know that a drone pilot was the buyer, because a drone pilot is going to be good at drones. A drone pilot's going to be good at flying, mapping, etc. A drone pilot's not necessarily a good business owner. But a lot of them haven't had enough time to be a good business owner. And so I think a lot of those conversations quickly die because, it would be, they want to do that and they want to hire me to stay on, or, I didn't see how they were going to accomplish that by coming in and just taking the revenue and the clients, right? I mean, that's just one piece of the pie.
Yeah. What, speaking of buyer types, so, whenever we launch a business, we're kind of evaluating the avatar of, this is the likely buyer. You have your individuals and then you have your strategics in your case. So I guess if I had to bet, I thought for sure a strategic was going to gobble you up and just put you on top of the, put at part of their service offering, but it wasn't. It was an individual. So I'm curious to know, what, because I think when this gets released and other shops like yours hear this, I think they're probably going to wonder, who is my buyer? So tell me a little bit about why you weren't appealing to the larger shops, and what made you, what was the avatar of the guy that finally bought it?
Sure. Well, the drone industry is kind of interesting right now because any of the big players are, for the most part, purely subcontracting everything. So you have some major national players that have contracts with real estate firms, developers, et cetera, where they provide nationwide coverage. We do the exact same thing. What that means is that we say we can do a shoot anywhere. We have shoots a couple times in Florida every month. We have some out on the West Coast. We've done shoots in probably 10 or more states. What that means is that you're able to control the project and run the project by subbing out. So for a large company like that, strategically to purchase us would make sense only in the ways of the contracts, the client list, and maybe our marketing. But the marketing is invaluable because they're going to brand it their stuff day one. So to be honest, I'm right along there with you. I thought we'd have 2 or 3 strategics lining up saying, we got to have it. Sure. Just write them a check, be done. So if I had to guess, I think that's the biggest holdback, is that they're going to purchase this, and then they're going to sit there and say, okay, who's going to run it? Who are we going to send to Indiana to be the face, to run it and to be seen? From a strategic standpoint, I was lucky with the buyer that came in. I didn't realize this at the time, but it started to make sense, but came from a real estate and construction background. So had I think 20 years in the construction industry, traveling all around the nation and locally. So for me, day one, if I'm him and I have the client list and then I come in and bring my own clients, you don't want to say it's foolproof, but I mean, we're spending money on it. And so that's where the relationships, I think, help.
The funny thing is, and I have to eat my words again, but now that we're behind it, and I'm looking at your deal, I think we looked at it more as a marketing photography business, and I think that was the mistake. It all ended well, but I think in doing an autopsy of your deal, I think this is more of almost like a surveying type company, that it falls more, and I say that only because it leads to where you found your buyer, because now we're looking at more of a construction related ancillary service, and I get the whole marketing side, but generally speaking, you're talking about topography, and you're talking about, encapsulating the company's culture and so on and so forth. That's the creative part. But as far as where you find the buyer, I think the type of buyer you found is the type of buyer that's going to buy other businesses like this. You know what I mean? Or am I off?
No, I think you're on. I do have to correct you. We can't say surveying. That's a no-no in the drone world, because we have surveyors that don't like us because we can scan from our drones. So just heads up there.
We're all
they don't like
family. That. All right. I'm
not
going to strike it, but I will. I will correct.
Yeah, I don't think you have to strike.
I apologize to all the surveyors out there.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm not striking that.
Yeah, they're super sensitive. We've had a couple run-ins with some that are mad we're playing in their sandbox, but
I see.
I think you're correct in the sense of the construction industry, in my opinion, has so much opportunity. And with one of the things that helped, I think, originally and off the bat, was I tried to sit down with these contractors and just say, what is helpful? And a perfect example is, hey, every 2 weeks we have a weekly standing meeting on Wednesday at 9 with the client and the stakeholders. So we started adjusting our shoots to go Tuesday afternoon. And so we could send them to them that night. Wednesday morning, they could load it up in their report. We were awesome for them. I mean, they were praising us left and right. And it was a tiny little change that we could make. The the reason I say that is because it just really comes down to once you get into an industry, and I think with the drones, it's so new, it's so innovative, it's so rapidly changing that you do have to kind of rely on your clients to say, what here's the tools that we can provide. How can we help you? And you're both kind of learning together. But in my opinion, that was always the best projects because we were collaborating together, and then we were ultimately providing what they needed, and then they were taking that and looking better. And it was just a true, partnership. And so to bring this all back to what your question was about on as far as the buyers and being in that construction world, I think 100% having those relationships in those industries where you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I know you guys have these projects going on. How are you handling this? Or are you getting questions to handle this? Every single year, more and more companies are coming out saying, we need pre-construction documentation from the drone. We need this and X, Y, Z. And just because the technology's there, and it really makes no sense not to have it. So I think going back to your question with the buyer, at least he has his finger on the pulse with the industry, what's coming up, what's being needed, and then they can back channel, go right to them and provide the service. So,
well, I think there's a mentality, project management in the trades is complements this drone industry really well.
Absolutely,
is kind of the way I see it.
Absolutely.
So I have a couple more questions on. I guess my first one is: were you surprised at valuation? I think it came in as a fair deal. I think everybody walked away happy. But I guess as you look at valuation now, what's your thoughts on where the buyer assessed risk? Because that determined value. All right. So what do you think of that now that you're behind it?
So, I have probably just under 2 years of business brokerage experience. So I think one of the biggest things that I noticed coming into the industry was how few sellers actually understood valuation and cash flow. I think a lot of owners aren't in the numbers and they don't truly understand. So for me, beginning, I wanted to just understand what the value was. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to know. Believe it or not, up until that point a few years ago, I just had no idea. We had our heads down. We've been plugging along and pulling a little bit out where we can, but really just investing in the business to grow it. And so I can tell you the valuation that came in early on a couple of years ago, and then what I sold it for, it was a significant difference. The first one was significantly lower. So I think as far as a valuation standpoint, I wasn't surprised. We worked internally and had everything. Yeah. We were able to review things. I think the challenge was we didn't have a lot of comps and previous businesses to compare them to. But I think at the end of the day, the benefit of the buyer that chose the company was that they had purchased a business before. They had a few other businesses, and
nice.
And the whole entire process of working with this buyer was different than I would have anticipated several other buyers to be. For example, and this might be a question you're getting ready. If it is, just we'll come back to it. But
no, go.
For example, contracts in place, employment agreements that are in place. I did have some buyers that said, look, I want this. I want to move forward on it, but I can't close until I know these contracts get assigned, and I can't close until I know these employee agreements are in place. And, it relates to a lot of business owners because where do you draw the line? I can't assign a contract before we close because what if we don't close? And why are we telling the client? So, there's so many things that can bog down the deal and muddy it up. But I think, fortunately, very fortunately, everything has worked out flawlessly in our transition for the company. Clients are happy, employees are happy, and there's a part of me that thought through the process, man, this buyer's kind of taking some risk here. But I think that goes back to what I said earlier, that, hey, I'm in this with you, and we're going to get it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that offset. I think the willingness of transition and the willingness that, you know what, I'm right here with you. This is part of the sale process, and granted, money has changed hands, but at the same time, I think the best sellers are the ones that can empathize with the buyer. That I know what you're going through, and let me come alongside of you and make sure that you get off on the best foot. So the next question had to do with due diligence. I know you had clean books because that's just who you are. How do you? I know most sellers cringe at the thought of the the scrutiny over how they run their business. How did due diligence go for you?
Well, it went a lot easier because it was a stock sale versus an asset sale. So there was no contracts that needed to be assigned. There's no employee agreements.
Yeah, but if I'm the buyer, I'm sitting here going, I also have all the contingent liabilities. So due diligence became even more important.
Yeah.
There was, if Andrew Wahl was a bad boy in a previous life, I have his sins. So carry on.
Yeah, I mean, so there were some things that made it easier as far as the assignment of several things, but then, to your point, I mean, when you go through a stock sale, there's different things that become challenging post sale. So I would say, arguably, we probably spent more time post close, finalizing things up. Accounts getting finalized and different things like that. But no, I mean, as far as the due diligence, gosh, again, I was fortunate. There really wasn't there was a heavy list, but since I had talked with buyers before, since we had all of our stuff ready to go, I mean, it was a fairly straightforward process. And I think the longest part was probably not even the APA, but I mean, and that's usually a half a week turnaround or so. So it hasn't been a ton. No, it's been mostly on the back end. So I can't say every buyer is like that.
Well, the broker gods look favorably upon you.
Yeah, got one.
So what surprised you out of? So you've now taken your own deal from start to finish. So what surprised you in this whole thing as a business owner?
I think I don't know if I would say anything surprised me. I think it's a very surreal thing. I think this is my third business that I started, third or fourth, by far the most successful, and then the only one that I've been able to successfully exit from. And I can tell you, I never thought about exit probably until 2 years ago. It wouldn't even have crossed my mind. I had gotten calls from business brokers, and I told them to go screw off, and I just had no interest in even accommodating the idea of selling. And I think that's been the most enlightening and surreal thing for me, because I just always assumed that when I was ready, I was going to just go sell it for $1 million or whatever, right? And there was no true correlation between what is my business worth? What am I doing? What if it's worth $50,000? Am I going to keep doing this until I realize it? So I think, as an entrepreneur, you put your head down, you work hard, you get to a point, life starts changing. And so for me, 2 years ago was an interesting point where I kind of put my head up and said, what do I have? Where is this going? What's the plan? And then from there,
nice.
I was familiar with IBA's marketing and process. So I know we put a good book together, and I just knew that but actually I heard it on this podcast. I feel horrible for not remembering the lady's name, but that's what actually sparked my interest and put it up online and saying, hey, here's my price, and I'm not in any hurry to sell. I'm not in any, I'm going to let this thing ride. And so I think it was doing that. There was countless nights of staying up, wondering, is this going to sell? If it doesn't, what am I going to do? what do I do with the employees, the equipment, what do I do with the contracts in place? I mean, so it was an extreme roller coaster, emotional roller coaster, I think, and this was just hate to say it, a side business that I started and grew. And so I think the thing that I was surprised about, to be honest, is that it all worked out. I mean, everything worked out, honestly, probably about as best as I could have imagined.
Yeah.
And, it's still surreal. I still am in the transition. And so I feel like, I'm still part of it.
I was going to, I was going to ask you that, when the wire hit your account, I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, it was, again, it was kind of surreal. I had just got back from a week-long vacation in Montana, and I was in a wedding that day. So I probably didn't even see it hit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So,
yeah, it was,
so
there was a lot going on, but no,
you hadn't sobered up before the wire hit.
No, I had to double check and make sure I had the right phone in my pocket. But it is surreal. I have a month of transition, so that ended in July, and so there's just a couple of things we're still doing. But I'm really, really looking forward to getting some time back, spending some more time on the business brokerage, commercial real estate side, and fortunately with this buyer, he's opened the door for if I bring new opportunities in. There's an opportunity to get some additional revenue on my end, and then he's going to keep me in an advising role. So it's just, nice. Again, if I had a magic wand, it completely worked out because selfishly, I
was going to say, that sounds like you found the right guy, and it's going to be a long-term relationship, and that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm bumping up on time, so I want to be sensitive to it. So I always ask this question about what's the one piece of advice that you'd give our listeners that would have the most immediate impact on their business. So what would that be for you?
I thought about this one, and I think this is what I'd leave everybody with. The best advice that I ever received was at Ball State. It was from a professor, my sales professor. His name was Scott Inks. And he related the whole entire semester into, ultimately everything can be broken down into two basic things, and that's relationships and numbers. And I've tried to, whatever I do in life, relate that back to what I'm doing. In a sense of creating and maintaining strong relationships and then understanding numbers that are working through your business. And I think if you can maintain those two things, whether it's employee relationships, vendor relationships, your relationships at home, and if you can understand the numbers, you're going to be okay. And that's been one thing that I've tried to really implement in my day-to-day. Is that good? Is that okay?
I think that's a good way to live, whether you're selling your business or living your life. I absolutely think everything falls back to relationships.
I will say the business advice, real quick, the business advice, if you're a business owner, is you need to understand your value, the value of your business. No matter if you're trying to sell, if you're ready now, if you're ready 10 years from now, someone's going to give you a call or knock on your door. And I promise you want to know that number. And we can help you come up with that number.
Well, what's the best way we can connect with you?
Well, I just deleted all my social media, but I am on LinkedIn. So you can get me on LinkedIn. If you want, you can put my cell phone here. What's that?
We'll have all of your contact information in the show notes. But so best place to find you is on LinkedIn?
Yep. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Reach out to my cell phone. I'm available really anytime, and would love to connect, and ultimately love to help anybody else out there that's trying to navigate through this process. And I can tell you it's not as overwhelming and daunting as you think, and the other side's great. So,
and one thing I failed to mention is age. I mean, you're 32, right?
32, yeah. 33 in October.
32. So. You know what? And to be honest with you, I see a lot more of your age group buying and selling companies quickly. Starting something and being able, and I love that for you. And and if I haven't said it enough, I'm thrilled to death that you're part of our team. I think I think the future resides in you and folks like you. I think it's one of the best additions I've made. So
no, well, I appreciate that. Hey, while we're hitting each other on the back, we gotta. I think you deserve some kudos, right? This is you just dropped your 90th episode on the podcast, right?
Something like that. I don't know.
Wow, that's impressive. That really is.
Well, you know what? Well, thank you. I hope many people get some value from it, and or whether many or one. And it's a good place to share some nuggets and get to talk to people like you. So thanks for joining me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. Really, really enjoyed talking to you today, and really happy to be part of this list with the other 90 plus people that have been on. So. Thanks again for having me on here.
Well, you've got stiff competition as far as we'll see what kind of numbers you bring. But knowing as transparent as you were, I have a feeling this episode's going to be really great. So awesome. Thanks again, bud.
All right,
we'll talk to you soon.
See you.
Thank you for joining us today on the How to Sell Your Business podcast. If you want more episodes packed with strategies to help sell your business for the maximum value, visit howtosellabusinesspodcast.com for tips and best practices to make your exit life-changing. Better yet, subscribe now so you never miss future episodes. This program is copyrighted by MISO Inc. All rights reserved.